Hi everyone, I hope you are well today. It's been a while since my last video, and really it's just been a combination of being really tired and really busy with work. I've had lots of things to talk about, but just haven't gotten around to making a video until today. So let me get you up to speed on my recent and current reading. Let's start with a book I've talked about in previous videos. This is Augustine's Confessions. So honestly, I have not been reading this much, mainly because when I do read it, I want to make sure I'm in the right frame of mind for it. I think I am now in chapter 3 or starting chapter 3 or book 3 because the chapters are called books. And I have been appreciating this on a devotional level and also historical level. It's been quite interesting to learn about Augustine's life and a lot of the topics that were on his mind growing up, the temptations he ran into, and how he drew closer to God in the midst of all that. And I'm not as far as I'd like to be, but so far it's certainly been worth the read, and I feel like this book really reaffirms to me how things don't change a lot over history. I mean, obviously there's cultural differences, historical differences, and so on, but so much of what he's writing about here is still in play today. Still things that we deal with on a daily basis. So if you're, hesitant about reading this, maybe it's on your list, and you're worried it's hard to get into. Well, so far it hasn't been hard to get into. A couple of people have told me the ending is difficult, but I don't really foresee any huge problems, at least for like the first 3/4 of this book. So Augustine's Confessions, slow going, but I am appreciating it. Another book that I read recently and completed is actually more of a short essay. This is In Praise of Shadows by Junichiro Tanizaki. This is a famous essay that he wrote in the 1930s about aesthetics, particularly Japanese aesthetics, and the relationship between their approach to beauty versus Western approach to beauty, and how history influences that development. So, for example, he starts out the book critiquing Western inventions like the toilet. It doesn't really fit into the Japanese aesthetic, but because the Japanese borrowed that technology, now they're having to deal with that juxtaposition, or really what he considers to be a clash of different styles and what would be considered beautiful in architecture and design. I found that side of things very interesting. I also enjoyed the parts where he was talking about the beauty of shadows and how different materials reflect light in different ways. So he goes on about lacquerware quite a bit in this. He also talks about just like different materials used in houses. That part was great. What really led me to a 2-star review here, as you can see. By the way, if you want, you can follow me on Goodreads. It's goodreads.com/classicsconsidered. But what really led me to the 2 stars here was, because this was written in the 30s, a time of extreme Japanese nationalism, going into World War II, he goes off onto this really unexpected and bizarre kind of racist rant towards the end. And, I read a lot of classics, so you read with that kind of lens in mind, right? That people's perspectives were different back then, and, to some extent, people were the product of their times. But it gets so bad in this book, so horrible, that it was really hard for me to get out of that again. Like, it just kind of ruined the whole book for me, and I'm definitely in the minority here because I think most people rate this book very highly, so I don't know. Give it a try. It might resonate with you more than it did me, but it was just one of those endings where I thought, wow, this kind of mars the entire book for me. It really cast so many of his his opinions in this unsavory light. And not only racist rants, but, just general misogynistic undertones. So, yeah, this was disappointing. I wouldn't say it was, I'm glad I read it, but it just wasn't quite as ageless as I was hoping and expecting it to be. Now, moving on to, I'll just mention I'm still reading Letters to Felice by Franz Kafka. I won't talk about it anymore because I already talked about it a lot last time. But in case you're wondering, I'm still reading it. I'm actually ordering a copy because I realized I kind of wish I had done that from the beginning. I really am enjoying reading the letters, and yeah, totally intend to finish it. It's a long book though, so it's going to take me some time. Another book that's taking me a bit of time is A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man by James Joyce. This is my second Joyce. I did a brief review of Dubliners last year, and just like with Dubliners, I'm finding this to be a pleasant surprise. He certainly writes in a very fluid style and jumps around a lot in the timeline, and it's not like the Waves level of stream of consciousness or anything, but you can see that he's developing this style that's very, moving from thing to thing very fluidly and really getting into the character's mind. This starts out following a young man. Actually, not a young man. It starts out when he's a boy, which I wasn't necessarily expecting, and now it's kind of following him into early adulthood and some of the things he's struggling with in terms of his hormones, and also, the more seriousness of his family is going into a time of poverty. They've moved away from the family estate, and now they're living in Dublin in very reduced circumstances. And what I really like about how this book is told is that these things are being revealed in a subtle way. So it's not like Joyce is sitting you down saying, okay, the dads really let them down, blah, blah, blah. No, he's letting this unfold, and not in a very, direct way, but through context and through these snippets of scenes where there's a conversation, and it's not like anything bad's even being said, but you're picking up on the family situation just through these subtle clues and hints, and the way Stephen reacts to it all, and the way he tries to find solace in different things, good and bad. So yeah, that is my impression of the book so far. Still got a long ways to go, but I am liking it a lot more than I maybe would have expected. Let's see. So another book that I have read and completed recently, actually haven't completed that one recently, but this one I have. This is One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And this is a book that's been on my list a very long time. It's very, very famous Russian classic in the West about this man who, but it's a day in the life of his hard labor prison sentence in the Gulag. And I have not read anything by this author yet. I have Cancer Ward on my bookshelf for literally years. So this wasn't my first exposure to his writing. I have read an essay by him called Live Not by Lies, which was excellent. Would recommend that. This one, again, day in the life story, starts out in the morning, ends in the evening. And I've read several prison or camp memoirs by now. This isn't a memoir per se, but it's an autobiographical novel or semi-autobiographical. And I think, these kinds of stories have a lot of similarities to each other. What kind of stood out to me in his was, I think he really succeeds in showing you how mundane life was, and how it was just very repetitive and tedious, and also the different ways people tried to survive in this situation. So, the main character here, Shukov, he's very pragmatic. He knows when to be honest, when to be a little dishonest. He knows who to, get in the good favor of and who to, just avoid. And then there's other characters who take, maybe they're a little more on the violent side, or maybe they're more reserved and they just sort of take things as they come. And the other thing that struck me in this book is how you can feel the paranoia of the Soviet Union in this time period in the way that the camp is run. And the weird thing too is how these prisoners had to really scrounge for the supplies that they're using to do their work, and they're sabotaging each other all the time because there's this weird competition going on in the camp. There's also kind of this black market going on, which is ironic because, it's supposed to be a labor camp run by, the USSR. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. I wouldn't say it's the most gripping of this kind of book I've ever read, but you can easily read it in a day. I think I read it over 2 days. I think it's worthwhile. It gets you really appreciating what you have, right? I really was greatly immersed in the extreme cold conditions that they were living in this snapshot of his prison sentence, and also how very little food they were living off of. And it was so hard to even believe that anyone survived that. So yeah, I would recommend this. I wouldn't say it's the most gripping of these kinds of books. I think Man's Search for Meaning is maybe a little more to my liking in terms of how the story is told, but this is still worth reading. So what else do we have here? One book that I picked up from a recent library visit is The Moon is Down by John Steinbeck. This is one of his shorter novellas, and it also takes place during World War II. I think it follows, one second. I believe it follows a town that's been occupied by the Nazis. I'm not quite sure exactly what the plot is about, but this was a book that was at one point banned. Apparently, if you possess this book in Mussolini's Italy, you would be executed. So I'm really curious to see what is it about this book that makes it so powerful. I believe the back cover describes it as propaganda, but even so, I'm just curious, what is it that made it such a book of hope for those who were looking to the Allied powers for rescue? So kind of looking forward to that. It's a shorter one, so I should be able to get to it pretty soon. And then a book I haven't started yet, but will be starting soon. This is another Joyce. This is Ulysses, and kind of an interesting interior design as well. I ended up buying a copy because I figured that with a book of this length, it's very unlikely I will finish it in time to return to the library. So I'll be reading this after Portrait of an Artist. Not feeling too worried about it yet, but we'll see. It is a long book, but this is another day in the life kind of story, so maybe it won't be too difficult. I think that's pretty much all I had for this video. Thanks to everyone who has subscribed recently or is sticking around through these slow times on the channel. Hopefully there will be more to share soon. I still want to do a review of The Woman in White. I haven't yet got up enough energy to finish my outline that I had written for it and all that good stuff, but I haven't forgotten about it. So hope you have a great weekend, a happy Easter for those celebrating, and I will see you in the future. Talk to you next time. Bye.